I never looked ahead until I heard your voice. I miss you. Hello everybody, it's Noah back again here. We're going to be talking about an album that I'm a little bit late to the game on. It's Trip the Witch's self-titled album from 2021. Now, overall, I would kind of describe this as sort of a soft fusion record. It kind of was out of the blue during the start of the pandemic with Stone Temple Pilots guitarist Troy Kovac and a session guitarist Dean DeLeo. And both of them actually found out that the other was a really big fan of each other's work. And then they ended up getting in touch and then making this album. Now, on this album, you're going to find a lot of different influences and sounds that surprisingly gel together super well for this varied collection of 10 tracks. It's short and sweet. It's mostly instrumental. There are a few vocal cuts on it. But overall, the kinds of sounds that I'm getting are things like country, jazz, rock, blues, folk, and even like some sort of dancey kind of disco stuff. So the first track, Saturn We Miss You, has some of that dancey pop stuff that I just mentioned. And it also has a surprise vocal appearance from John Anderson of Yes fame. And it's really the only vocal-led track on the entire album. There's some like faint vocals on the very last track, but other than that, that's really it for vocals. And he sounds really good for being as old he is. I believe he's in his late 70s at this point. But yeah, he's still kicking and he's still sounding great. So props to the man. This first track kind of sets up a lot of the dense but easy listening guitar work that we're going to be hearing throughout the rest of the album. And that's the main focus of this album, is the interplay between the two guitars and the multiple layers that they end up putting on some of the tracks here. It's laid back, it's funky, it's spacey, it's vibey. The next track is called Dressed to Kill Myself, and I absolutely love that title. It's a great title. It's very psyche, it's very mellow. It's got a really interesting chord progression that, upon first listen, really caught my ear and really kind of pulled me in. There's a lot of those throughout this album too, just really sweet but also unexpected chord progressions. Feels kind of a nod to Pink Floyd. Wall of Sound has a very sweet chord progression, a very strong melody, and kind of the description on the album for where I was listening to this, it mentioned a lot of singable vocal like guitar lines, and there's tons of this on this track too. They're just very hooky, very catchy melodies, and very satisfying chord progressions. A lot of very like things that just come together very well on a lot of these tracks. Fell from the Floor has some nice like slide guitar, as well as Wall of Sound. And there's a lot of complementary guitar lines from one to the next, a lot of counterpoint, smart, satisfying guitar work, and very thoughtful. And because of that attention to detail, it's just so easy to listen to. It's so easy to just wish that a chord progression or a melody could just play forever. And it's great. And then next we have Planet TD1. This is that other Pink Floyd-esque track that I mentioned earlier. This is a dead ringer for Shine On You Crazy Diamond, but it creates its own impression. But they do it in their own sound and their own structure and their own... They just put their own spin on a very familiar flavor, which is something that bands like Greta Van Fleet fail to do. And then at the end of Planet TD1, there's this ripping solo that just like shreds your ears with feel. There's a lot of very Gilmour-esque soloing across this album, even on the stuff that's not, a tribute to Pink Floyd. And there's nothing wrong with having these tributes to Pink Floyd. They sound great. In the same file as Planet TD1, there's like kind of a lead-in into the next track. It's a little jarring. I honestly thought it was like the start of the next track, and then when the actual next track started, I thought it was just another section of the track that had already started. Speaking of the next track, Surfside Lounge, it's kind of got this folksy 12-string and kind of mandolin action. And, honestly, it sounds like, I'm just on the beach and, I'm walking by everyone, my ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, and, taking a dip in the water. And it honestly kind of sounds like a bit like Wii Sports Resort. Yeah, I could absolutely see it being something like on the menu screen, like pick the sport you want to play. And now we're on to the next track called We Lived Here. It's a very funky, like heavy power ballad. It's sort of like organic 80s power ballad, with like Telecasters. I just kind of hear You're the Voice over it for some reason. I don't know. That's just kind of the thing that pops into my head when I think of it. And it's arranged very well. The guitar work towards the end, the layering of each part is really cool. The solo in the middle and then the bridge back into the rest of the song is nice. It's just a great track around. Space Wagon. It's really the only track that's just a straight up dud, honestly, to me. And in that sense, I mean, it has the least interesting material to work with. There's a little bit too much space and there's not really a clear melody, except for in the B section. And even then, it just kind of feels tedious. And I just kind of, it's a skip, honestly, for me. And then we have The Bird Returns. This has the smoothest guitar work. It's just the conglomeration of all the kind of neo-soul sort of jazz-isms. I don't know, there's a lot of feeling behind everything that they're doing in this track. It's like sort of Hendrix, Frusciante, John Mayer-esque playing, the guitar line that they're playing is just so good. I don't know, I just really love it. And then they've got like the harmony on top of it. There is somewhat of an awkward bridge in the middle of The Bird Returns, but it's short and it gets back to, the good stuff, the meat and potatoes of it. It doesn't kill the track, and it just keeps flowing on. Now we're on to the last track of the album, Blacklight / Reclaim My Time. It's got a crunchy guitar playing in 7, and it's got this kind of like sitar melody. It has really nice solos from, I believe, both Bukovac and DeLeo. They break them up nice and lead into one another really nice. And then they slow it down into this kind of jam section for the second half of the song. And this is where we get like the really faint vocals, kind of sounding like it's through like the sort of bus speaker with like a high pass filter on. And it just kind of jams on out with some solo stuff, and that's the end of the album. This album is mostly focused on the interplay between the two guitars. There isn't a whole lot going on between the drums and bass interacting with the rest of the band. Obviously, they're just kind of filling their roles throughout this album, and that's totally fine. They sound great, and they don't take away from the track at all, and they give them a solid foundation for the both of them to do their thing, and it sounds great. This album is an eclectic collage of sorts of impressions of numerous different styles and genres, and it does it super well, and I respect it so much for that. On this album, I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8. So let me know what you think about this album, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.